Have you seen a UFO? I have not, but...
No. Yup. No. Yup. No. Yup. No.
Hey crew, I put that video up on TikTok a couple weeks ago, got like 600 comments. I just wanted to run through some of them real quick. Some of them are incredible, and I just thought I'd answer some of your questions. One of the best questions, and this is probably one of the best questions I've ever received in all of my flying career. End of the world movie scenario, skipping protocols, how fast could you start up a plane and get it going? If it was dark, like just sitting out on the ramp and not running or connected to power, it would take us a minute to start the APU, a minute to run through everything, maybe 4 or 5 minutes to start up the engines, and throw in the flight plan while you're taxiing out. So like legit end of the world scenario, you just need to get off the ground and get out of there. I don't know, 8-10 minutes maybe. This next question, thank you for doing a job not many could or would do. My question is, have you ever had a woman go into labor? No, that just happened recently on a flight to Hawaii, I think, or back from Hawaii. But that brings up a question I've always had. On every flight, we write down how many souls on board we have. And I've always wondered, if a woman is pregnant, she's counted as one soul, even though there's 2 of them. So then would you change your souls on board count if someone went into labor? I don't know. What's a buddy pass? That's a good question. Basically, all of our family flies for free. My parents, my wife, my kids, my brothers. Buddy passes are something you can give to friends. For the company I work for, you can either pick one person to assign buddy passes to for the year, and they get buddy passes for the year and they're free. Or you can have it set up so that you can give buddy passes to anybody, but they cost some money. And they're not really that great of a deal. I mean, it could be $200 to go across the country. If you can buy a ticket for the same price, I don't know, it's not worthwhile. Plus you're flying standby, so I don't really use buddy passes too often. I have a severe anxiety of flying. What are some pilot tips I need to know about safety? Like, how does the plane stay in the air? We'll get to the anxiety part later, but plane stays in the air with Bernoulli's principle, basically. So the air going over the top of the wing is faster, which creates lower pressure. The air over the bottom of the wing is slower, creates a higher pressure, and they create lift. How long does it take to become a pilot? Is there a maximum age? If you just want to get your private pilot license, you could probably do that, I don't know, 6 months maybe, a year. To get all your ratings up to like a flight instructor rating, maybe takes 2 or 3 years. And there's no maximum age there for being a pilot as long as you can pass your aviation medical exam every year. There's no maximum age. There's a maximum age to be an airline pilot, and that's 65. Are pilots trained to walk a certain way in the airport, upright, chin in the air, and very classy? No. I've seen plenty of pilots who are not classy, and I'm usually looking at my phone. So, do you have different oxygen supply than the rest of the aircraft? No, we all breathe the same air, but our oxygen masks are different than the ones in the cabin. The ones in the cabin for passengers are created, it's oxygen created by oxygen generators. That's why you pull down on the thing, it starts an oxygen generator, and that lasts for about 15 minutes, which is enough time to get down to an altitude where you can breathe if there's a decompression. The oxygen in the cockpit is like a sealed mask. It's 100% oxygen, and we have a big bottle, separate bottle for us. Can a passenger land the plane without any experience? That's a great question. No, really. If you like in a movie, if you were in the cockpit and someone had to talk you through a landing, we could probably talk you through running it through an auto landing where the autopilot lands the airplane and brings it to a stop on the runway. That would be somewhat easy to do. But no, talking someone through an actual landing with no experience would be catastrophic. What happens if you don't like your pilot? Can you get a new one, or your co-pilot? Generally, you're with the same co-pilot or pilot the whole trip, captain or first officer. You generally won't be able to just get a new one if you don't get along. We have resources that we can go to if it's a safety concern. We can address that, but that doesn't really happen very often. So there is a way for first officers, when they bid their monthly schedule, if there's one specific pilot that they don't want to fly with, then they just put their employee number and avoid flying with that employee number, and then the computer, when they put out the schedule, won't pair you with that person. Have you ever drank while piloting or know someone who did? No. This is kind of a lucrative career, and most guys want to stay on the money-making side of that. What steps are you and your flight staff taught in dealing with medical issues or those like heart issues, seizures? Our flight attendants are very highly trained in medical emergencies and all that kind of stuff. They have access to the first aid kits. We have emergency medical kits on board, and doctors have access to that. I'm 45, working on my instrument rating. Is it too late to go for a career as a pilot? No, absolutely not. You get all your stuff done in 5 years, you still have 15 years to be an airline pilot, and that's awesome. Do we still need live pilots? I know I feel better with one, but yeah, I think so. I mean, I thought the same thing about cars though too, and we got self-driving cars. But you know, pilots, it helps that they've got a little stake in the game, and you know, there's all sorts of things that they can feel and hear that you wouldn't feel and hear if you were, say, like a drone pilot flying an airliner from a remote location, like changes in your ear pressure and all that kind of stuff. So I think live pilots are going to be around for a while. Do I have a favorite place to fly? Yes, Lisbon in Portugal and Hawaii, basically anywhere in Hawaii. Why does it seem like the engines go silent mid-flight and after takeoff it feels like we suddenly stall or slow down? Always scary. So we take off with takeoff power, and then shortly after takeoff, like within the first 30 seconds, we pull the power back a little bit to climb power, and then once we get into cruise flight, we pull it back even more to cruise power, and that helps us conserve gas and stay within the structural limits of the airplane. So yeah, we're always adjusting the power. How long did I go to school? What did I study? I got a 4-year degree in aviation. You don't need a 4-year degree in aviation, but you do need a 4-year degree in something. And I don't know why. I would assume that it's because it shows that you have an ability to learn at kind of a higher level. But yeah, you need your flight time and your ratings, but you don't need a 4-year degree in aviation specifically. Is autopilot a real thing? Yeah, like I talked about earlier with the auto landing, yeah, we use the autopilot all the time. We take off. We can turn on the autopilot as quickly as 1,000 feet. Most people don't. But yeah, you could, on an 8-hour flight to Europe, you know, the autopilot's probably on for 7 hours and 55 minutes of that whole flight. How's the coffee? Bad. But, you know, any port in the storm, right? If you're on a 10-hour flight and it's the middle of the night, that you'll take what you can get. How do you deal with constant time zone changes? That's a good question. Take a lot of naps, drink a lot of coffee. I try to adjust myself to the time zone as quickly as possible. So if it's daytime, I'm up, and if it's nighttime, I'm sleeping, regardless of where my body thinks it is. And then I'll just take naps to adjust to that or drink coffee. My favorite place to fly over, probably Greenland. Greenland is really pretty, and it's just so isolated, and it's really cool. How far can you glide without engines? Like if both engines failed? I don't really know, but I would say 3 miles for every 1,000 feet would be probably a pretty good guess. So if you're at 30,000 feet, you'd probably go about 90 miles. Are there any secrets to getting an upgraded seat? Join the reward club. I always bring treats for the flight attendants, chocolates or whatever. That doesn't mean you're gonna get upgraded. Upgrades go based on who deserves it. A little snack for the flight attendant is not gonna hurt, and you might get a free drink or something out of the deal. I love when pilots say we'll arrive at such and such a time and we'll be over this place in 15 minutes. I really enjoy when they talk to us. I agree, I like talking on the PA. Some pilots don't. It's kind of a fine line between talking too much and not talking enough. Most people wanna sleep or watch movies or not really be interrupted. But if there's something cool, I like to point it out. Do you spend a lot of good quality time with your family? Yes, I do. I generally get 15 to 18 days off per month on like a normal schedule. So I'm home a lot. Do I ever get air sickness? That's a good question. No, not really. When I'm flying, for sure not. The only time I've gotten sick, almost sick on an airplane is when a friend of mine and I were doing aerobatics. And if you don't know where to look when you're doing aerobatics, it's kind of like when you're on a boat, you look out at the horizon. If you don't know where to look when you're going upside down and spinning around, it can be easy to get airsick. Can you do a detour around the area that has turbulence? Kind of. We generally plan our flights to avoid turbulence, but usually that's based on altitude and not like a whole area. We would be flying around an area of like thunderstorms for sure, but we generally don't plan our flight around an area of turbulence if it's just, like clear air turbulence. Our pilots wear parachutes and we skydive from them. This is about the parachute thing on my TikTok video. I don't really care for the plane ride, but it sure is fun jumping out of them. Yeah, we don't wear parachutes, or we don't have parachutes on the airplane anywhere. Skydive airplanes are required, the pilots are required to wear parachutes, just in case there's an accident they need to get out also. I used to fly skydivers, so I wore a parachute when I was flying skydivers, and then I also did some skydiving myself. I agree, it is fun jumping out of them. Is it ever allowed for kids to enter the cockpit like in the old days? Yes, please come up to the cockpit, bring your kids. If you just want to come up yourself, come up yourself. I'm happy to take pictures or do whatever you want. Wear my hat. Do you wear jammies when you have your snooze on long hauls? So on the flights that I typically do where we have breaks, we just get a seat in first class for the breaks. And the break, like the longest break would be 4 hours maybe. So no, I don't change into pajamas or anything. On the really long flights, like the 14-hour flights, yeah, the pilots can put on pajamas or change their clothes or wear whatever they want. They go into a bunk room, and they're able to change their clothes and take a nice long rest. What retraining is required post-pandemic shutdown? That's a good question. So you're required to make 3 takeoff and landings every 90 days. If you did that during the shutdown, then there's no retraining required at all. If you went longer than 90 days without making 3 takeoff and landings, then you just go back and do those in the simulator. Is the Earth flat? I don't know, it looks flat. Is the ding in the cabin indicating the more dangerous part of the flight? After takeoff, that's their signal that they can get up and start their service. And then on the descent, it signals that it's time to sit down and get ready to land. It also signals sterile cockpit time for us. So what that means is the flight attendants aren't allowed to call up to the cockpit or disturb us in any means unless it's an emergency. So that just helps us concentrate on what we're doing during like the critical part of the flight. Do I ever get nervous during an aborted takeoff or landing? No, a go around or an aborted landing, I guess is you might call it. We call those go arounds. That's standard procedure. That's no paperwork required. It's not an abnormal thing. Aborted takeoff, below 100 knots as we're accelerating down the runway. Below 100 knots, we can stop for anything. After 100 knots, it's got to be a severe, something pretty severe. Engine fire, failure, that kind of stuff. So otherwise, we keep going and handle it once we get in the air. Have you seen a UFO? I have not, but I did hear one night, I was flying out over Montana or something. Another airplane on the same frequency that we were on said that they saw a light off of their like 9 o'clock position, so like right off the wing. And they thought it was another airplane. And then it went from 9 o'clock to way out in front of them in like a second. He thought it was an airplane. They asked the controller, the air traffic controller, about it, and he said there was no other airplanes around. So I don't know what that was, but that's the closest I've ever gotten to seeing a UFO. Finally, I did a fear of flying course at London Heathrow. It explained so much to me. I also did the flight on my own. So that's addressing the fear of flying. A lot of people have a fear of flying, and they have fear of flying courses where you go through a bunch of classes or you meet with a counselor, and then ultimately you go and take a flight. And I've had a few people come up to the cockpit with like a note from their counselor saying, hey, I just did this course, and that, you know, you're supposed to meet the pilots. And so if you have a fear of flying, maybe taking one of those courses would not be a bad idea. And I also put out a video not too long ago about addressing some common flying fears. So I'll put that right here, and that was fun. Thanks for putting all those questions on TikTok. See you on the next one. Have you ever had a woman go into labor? No, that just happened recently on a flight to Hawaii, I think, or back from Hawaii. And no, that would be awesome. I'd love to see that. One thing that...
I'm gonna go wash my eyes. That kid's gonna have a lot of hair.